Welcome to Local Everywhere. I'm Cynthia Pooler, and my guest today is Vanessa Ogle, and she has written a book about poetry, and it's called Mother of Zero. So, Vanessa, you take over. What's your book all about?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to speak with you today.
Thank you.
So, my book is a collection of poetry and it explores the relationship between mothers and daughters and also between people and places. So, I was born and raised in Michigan, and there's a lot of themes of that imagery in my book. And my book also wrestles with the question of whether or not I would like to have children. And there's a wonderful book by Sheila Heti called Motherhood. And she's also exploring that topic. And when I was writing this, that was very helpful for me to see the ways that other artists have wrestled with this very eternal question.
So, how long have you been writing poetry?
Yeah, I've been writing poetry for a long time. I think even when I was a child, what I was doing was writing poetry. I didn't call it that. I thought, oh, this is just something that I want to jot down. This is something I want to, make exist somewhere besides my head. But I would say, even very early in elementary school, I was very committed to this act of writing and
Mhm.
making things into poems. And then in 2018, I entered graduate school where I got my MFA from Hunter College in creative writing with a concentration in poetry.
Wow. So over the years, of course, you've grown up a little since you first was interested in poetry. So not only have you grown, but your poetry has evolved. When you were younger, what kind of poems did you write?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, a lot of the poems were kind of trying to mimic different poets that I had read. I think a lot of poets maybe go through that phase where you have to feel very formal with your poems. So I think I really focused on sound a lot more. Now I've actually gotten away from that. And I think some of my poems, well, they still look to emphasize the way things sound. It's not this intense focus, but I really enjoyed how poems sounded when I was younger. My mother actually memorized a lot of poetry, and I think that there is something to that. And the poems that really stick with me are the poems that have a strong emphasis on sound. So, the poems that you memorize in school, a lot of Robert Frost or other things where you're kind of getting that rhythm and sound were really the focus of my early years.
So
So,
what inspires you to write poetry?
I think I've always wanted to find avenues for expression. I like a lot of different types of art forms. Um, and poetry, well, it's not only a vehicle of expression for me, it's something that has given me a chance to operate as both an art form and an outlet. So I think it's just really about trying to capture feelings and also places and questions and look at ways of truth and how that impacts the world and my writing.
So is this your first book that you've written, Mother of Zero?
Yes, this is my first book.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit of what that's like, what you have written in it?
Yeah, so it's been very exciting. The book itself is being released in March of 2024, but everyone could pre-order it right now from Finishing Line Press. And I think it's been really exciting because I've had a lot of creative control over this book. I was able to help design the cover. I chose a photo actually of a doll that my aunt made, and it's kind of a haunting photo. And I have heard a lot of comments on this doll. A lot of friends would be like, what is this thing? And I think I had one friend say that would be a great book cover, and that always kind of stuck with me. And so having that creative control has been fun, that literal process of it. And then just writing the book itself. I think some of the poems came from when I was in graduate school, and then the pandemic gave me a lot of time to work with those poems and revise them and really hone them down into something that I felt was worthy of being a collection. And yeah, it's a lot of exploration. So I'm excited for it to actually get into the world and get into people's hands.
So during COVID, did that inspire you to have a different outlook on your art and did you write a lot of stuff during that time period?
Yes, COVID really changed my perspective a lot, and it gave me a lot of time to go inward. And I think it was a really pivotal time for a lot of artists because a lot of your art, you are creating it alone. It was also very lonely, and there was, of course, so much happening in the world. Um, but Sharon Olds has a book, Ballads, that came out, and she has some of her quarantine poetry in that, and that's been interesting to see things that were written in that time come out into the world. And I think for me personally, it gave me a chance to really revise. And I also wrote a lot of short stories during COVID.
Mm.
Um, I think as much as I love poetry and as much as I was trying to engage with my poems at that time, I wanted to escape myself a little bit. So I think the short stories offered a better outlet for me at that time, but it gave me a lot of time to sit with my poems and revise them and think of other ways that I wanted to tell stories and create art.
I think creating art is wonderful. It gives it not only you share your perspective, but also it allows people to look at an artist's work and go, uh-huh, I never thought of it that way. I think that's really exciting.
Definitely. And it's exciting for me when I can read my friends' work or even strangers' work and feel that connection that I don't think you would ordinarily feel. So much of our day-to-day life is just about surviving or focusing on the next event or the next holiday. And I think art gives us a chance to kind of look into someone's head a little bit and really understand what or how they see the world.
Now, was getting your book published difficult or was it easy?
I think it was fairly straightforward. So I know people that have published through Finishing Line before. They do great work and they publish a lot of established and emerging poets. So I think it was fairly straightforward from that standpoint. Um, And this is I just want to emphasize this is a poetry chapbook, so it is shorter in length than a full collection or volume.
Hmm. Hmm. So, are you thinking of a second second volume at this point?
Yes, I already have a few different ideas. And I think too, while I'm not a mother yet, I wanted this poem collection to be out in the world because if one day that I do have a child, I want to make sure that this represents the things that I felt during that time period. And it gives
Hmm.
me space to grow and evolve and continue to evaluate different perspectives.
So, as you write your poetry, do you feel as if you have grown and evolved as these words come out on the paper, and you say, "Oh, gee, that's great."
Yes, I think so. And I think that's what's really exciting when you can move through the publishing process is you can understand that something is going to live and exist in a specific moment in time, and it gives you the space and the freedom to grow from that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very exciting to start thinking of other projects and other things that I want to do already. And I think change can be very scary sometimes, but I think that it's also a really great opportunity to explore and play and have fun with things.
Change is difficult for a lot of people. Do you do you write a lot about change?
Sometimes, yes. And I think what's interesting for me, and I have written about this exact feeling before, is change can be scary, but so can permanence. And I think sometimes, in fact, permanence can be scarier when you look and you see that nothing has changed, when you are desperate to move in a different direction. And I
Mm,
think that's at the crux of some of my work, of this idea of being concerned or scared about both options at
mhm,
times and what
mm.
that means.
So, is poetry your full-time profession?
So I'm a full-time writer right now. I'm working freelance. I've had my nonfiction published in different outlets, the New York Times, The Nation, the Brooklyn Paper, and elsewhere. And I also have done photography as well. So I would say, on a whole, I am a writer. Poetry is probably one of my favorite focuses, but at this time, it's mixed into all the other little writing that I'm doing.
And what kind of photography have you done?
Done a lot of journalistic photography since I did work as a reporter.
Uh,
So that was fun. You kind of get to capture life exactly as it's happening.
so do you see photography and poetry as two different art forms, or do you see it blending into one?
I see them as very different. I think with photography, of course, you can manipulate an image or a perspective. I think you are still dealing with the same subject, though.
Mhm,
Whereas I think in poetry, you can just really have a lot of creative freedom to describe things in different ways. And I think that's something that I've kind of wrestled with, is there is this idea that poetry is always a truth. And I think it can be an artistic truth, but I think poetry isn't always an absolute truth. And it's interesting, in one of the libraries that I go to, they have the poetry listed under nonfiction. And that's a very interesting for me because I know many poets who don't write from a place of absolute truth. Maybe they're trying to evoke something with a greater truth, but they're not being necessarily factual in their telling. And I think that that is okay. There are some poets that don't agree with that and they want poetry rooted in a very absolute truth. But I think the difference is with a lot of photography, if it's journalistic, you should represent what is happening. Whereas I think with poetry, you can get to a greater truth by sometimes not reflecting what is happening, sometimes creating a vision for what you wish was true. That can sometimes reveal more.
oh, that's interesting. So, do you have your book in front of
I
you?
don't have it right now. I will be getting the galley in about a month.
Okay, because if you did, I was going to ask you to read one of your poems.
Oh, well, I could do that. I don't have the book
Okay.
with me, but I can pull up one of my poems. All right. I'll read Mother of Zero since that
Okay,
is the title of the
okay.
collection. Mother of Zero. If you add real to the Google search for newborn, you get dolls. Pink dolls, white dolls, weighted dolls, dolls with bare feet, toes curled inward, so they're always moving something, a twitch even in sleep. And isn't it just like life that adding in the qualifier of real makes something not real, false, imitation, our best attempt? I wanted to show him what a baby would be like, covered in that pale slime I assume is from the vagina. Movies use docile 8-month-olds or dolls, anything but newborns. My mother thinks Hollywood hospital scenes should use real babies, weak necked and wobbly. She wants cheeks with fingernail scratches, real life. She's a literalist who stays awake even when she snores, who remembers her surgery, saying, I kept tapping my arm to let them know I was awake. She heard them say she was under. Every choice always seems like the wrong one. On the bus today, I saw a mother so patient with her child, the baby thinking every red sign was an apple, and I didn't know which one I'd rather be, the one who knows someone is wrong or the one who speaks without thought, only instinct.
That was nice. That was
Thank
great.
you. Thank you so
So,
much.
so when is your book coming out?
So it will be out in March of 2024, but everyone can pre-order it now.
And how can they do that?
So you can go to Finishing Line Press and you can type my name in, or you could just Google my name, Vanessa Ogle, Mother of Zero, and it will give you a link right to the book.
So are you self-publishing?
No, I'm going through Finishing Line Press.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just hope everyone, continues to support the arts and figure out what art form that they want to focus on and practice. I think the arts are super important. So
Do you think they're more important now, post-COVID, than they were before?
I think they have always been important. I think what's been renewed is the emphasis on how they can help you during a really difficult time and how they can kind of transcend your life and give you something to focus on that's bigger picture than the day-to-day life.
Hmm. So you've been listening to Vanessa Ogle. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Local Everywhere. And if you like this channel, if you like this program, sorry, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I also have a new website called digitalcynthia.com, and you could see all my videos out there. So thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a great day.